Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining virtually. We'll start in just a couple minutes, see if anyone else joins. And quickly, thank you for joining us for the rescheduled presentation. We did not intend to have moved this to this week, but we're still happy that you're here. Thank you for joining. And obviously, we still have plenty of time to work on the applications for the awards we're going to talk about. Close the door. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Jesse Wieland. I'm the Associate Director at the Office of National Fellowships. And my colleague is also here with us virtually, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Bonnie Garcia Glockner. I'm the Assistant Director for the Office of National Fellowships.
So obviously today we're going to be talking about fellowships specific to international affairs, public policy, national security, and other relevant fields. The awards that we're going to speak to range. There are some that are maybe more most relevant for lower division students, others for upper division students, and then a few that are relevant for alumni or grad students. And some of these are malleable to be adaptive for wherever you may be in your academic journey. And so obviously, if we're going to be in, hold on, let me get this working really quickly. If we're talking about international affairs, foreign policy, if we're talking about this field, many of you may already be or maybe interested in pursuing the study of a foreign language. And there is egregious amounts of funding out there from the US government they would be more than happy to support you in that endeavor. And first and foremost, one of the more recognizable fellowships is the Critical Language Scholarship. And the reason why it tends to be a little bit more recognizable, it tends to be easier to accommodate when it comes to your academic calendar because it is just a summer program. There's another award we're going to talk about in a minute, the Boren Scholarship, that is for a much longer duration. But CLS, it takes place over the summer, every summer. They also have the CLS Spark program, which I'll talk about in a minute. But CLS has a shorter list of eligible languages. I believe they have about 15, which includes Mandarin, Russian, Urdu, Punjabi, plenty of languages that Florida State has resources for, including Portuguese, Russian, if I didn't mention that, Arabic. But for most of the languages that CLS works with, and for most of the languages that we'll talk about through the Boren Scholarship in just a minute, it doesn't require any prior experience in the language. A few of these languages do, those being Arabic, Portuguese, Russian, Mandarin, Japanese. But that for some of those, it's only 1 year of prior experience, which, if that's something that you may be studying currently or maybe plan to study, you can still apply in the fall semester before that summer that you would travel abroad. But the CLS program really bills itself as less of a traditional study abroad experience. I mean, that's quite literally what you are doing, but they don't want this to be misconstrued as a study abroad program that may be a little bit more lax. I'm going abroad and taking wine classes in Italy. That's not it. But if you can do that, you absolutely should do that. But CLS is an extremely rigorous program. So even though it's only a couple of months long, the language gains that you would earn during your time through the CLS program is about equivalent to what you would earn in a year of study at your home institution. And that's partly because, yes, you're taking rigorous coursework, but you're also paired with a language partner during the entire program to have more informal, casual conversations with. You're also usually put with a homestay. So you're getting the you're getting the language both academically, colloquially, and being surrounded by it on a daily basis. Like they really try to sell you on that pure immersion. And so for many students, whether you're at the beginning of your collegiate career, or if you're at the end of your collegiate career, and I need to make these rapid gains in the language before I transition into graduate school or into my professional career, this could be a really excellent program for you. You do need to be an enrolled undergraduate or graduate student to be eligible. But say if you're in your final year, your senior year, you're still eligible to apply even if you graduate in the spring semester before starting this over the summer. This one application is due in November, mid-November. I don't think they've set a formal date yet. And the application is broken down into about 5 short essays. One of those being a little bit longer. It's the longest one is 500 words, and that's going to be your personal statement, which obviously explores who you are and the goals that you have. But then the other shorter essays are broken down into what is it that you need this language for? Like, how does this connect to your career? How are you going to continue your language study at the conclusion of this program? That can be a challenging question, especially if you're coming back to an institution that doesn't offer language courses in the language that you study through CLS. And so we can find other creative means to continue that study, even if it is more informal for now. But regardless, definitely come and talk to us about this opportunity. I know I mentioned the CLS Spark program. That is a purely virtual program that you can apply to perhaps in addition, if you qualify for both, to the CLS program. The benefit of CLS Spark is if you're selected for that program and you would like to apply for the formal CLS program the following year, your application will be automatically moved past that initial stage of review. So you'll automatically be considered a semifinalist if you come back to the CLS proper program. Now, the Boren scholarship, so both of these, both CLS and Boren, they want to know what your career aspirations are. Boren has a strong vested interest that you need this increased language proficiency to pursue a career in government work, in foreign affairs, whether that be with the Department of State, Homeland Security, Department of Defense, or another smaller department therein. And in the review process for Boren, that is what they look for first and foremost. And so I'm quickly skip ahead to the next slide because Boren has a much larger list of languages that are eligible. Like I said, for CLS, they only have about 15 that are eligible, but any of the languages here would qualify for Boren as long as you find a university or a program that would allow you to study that language, assuming Florida State University doesn't have that opportunity. So that differs from CLS in that, so for CLS, you apply to a language, if you're accepted, they put you in a program that is already well curated and established. Boren has that to a small extent. And so you can see next to some of these languages like Twi through the African languages program that they have, through Indonesian, through Turkish, through Urdu. They have built programs that you can apply to, and it would be similar to a CLS experience. So they're going to tell you the curriculum, where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing. And so that's nice for those languages. But if you're applying for any of these others, you need to find the proper program for you. And so maybe there's other universities across the US whose programs you could apply for. That you can speak to, obviously, international programs at Florida State, or you might have a little bit better luck with the Center for Global Engagement at FSU. But That's why we start a boring process very early on, is because we're not necessarily working on the application just yet, but we're looking to find a proper program for you that you can use in your application. And so another way that Boren differs from CLS, CLS, the application is broken down into those 5 small essays. But what's nice about this is there's only 2 essays that you need to write, both of them being 800 words. That first essay is the national security essay. And so what we don't want that essay to be is just a Wikipedia page of what national security looks like in the country that you're applying to. But what we do want that to be is a nuanced look based on your academic discipline, based on your interest, for why do you need to be studying this language in this country in order to improve America's relationship with that nation, relative to, and then you fill in the blank there. So we have had students that have defined national security relative to humanitarian efforts, define it relative to public health, or define it relative to whatever their academic discipline may be. And you'll intentionally see that Boren does not define national security in any way on their website, because they want you to do that. And so feel free to create or to approach that creatively, as long as it makes sense. The second essay, that is focused entirely on your academic and career trajectory. And so they want to know, what is the relevance of this region in this language to get you to where you want to be 5 to 10 to 20 to 30 years from now. Obviously, for many students applying for Boren, that goal is, I want to become a foreign service officer. That's an excellent goal to have. If that is all that you talk about, and you say, I'm applying to Boren, and then afterwards I'm going to be an FSO, then that's really not going to be as competitive, because there are many steps that you need to take in order to educate yourself, develop the skills that you need, take the FSO exam, and then eventually in your career, you will become, hopefully, an FSO. But you need to have a competitive application. You need to break down those steps to show, okay, I understand that following the conclusion of my Boren experience, I need to enroll in a master's degree studying whatever that may be, to eventually get a job in this sector, doing whatever type of work. And so for Boren, they will fund up to a full year of you pursuing this program, this language study abroad. To be competitive, you want to show that at least a 6-month-long program. So that could be a summer, fall, that could be maybe a spring, summer, or up to that full year. And you do need to finish your Boren experience before you graduate with your bachelor's degree. Now, if you're a graduate student, there is what is called the Boren Fellowship. That is essentially exactly like the Boren Scholarship, but they add a few other caveats so that would allow you to, say, conduct research. So if you're in a doctoral program or something like that. But for undergraduates that are applying to this, you need, like I said, you need to complete the program before you graduate, but you are still eligible to apply as a 4th-year senior. There's kind of a known loophole where if you apply during your senior year and you are awarded the scholarship, we can work with the registrar's office to make sure you're still affiliated with the university, and you can still walk with your peers and go through all of the rigmarole of graduation. But we just don't post your diploma, so you're still affiliated with Florida State, but it's not until you actually complete your Boren experience that we post that diploma. Something else that sets Boren apart is that they do have a requirement that upon the completion of your Boren experience, you have, say, this 5-year window to complete a 1-year commitment of working for the federal government in some way. And so that's another aspect that you need to weave into your essays, specifically into essay 2. And so that could be with the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Department of State. That could be, they have what are called tier 1 work experiences, but then there are also tier 2s. And so you can look on Boren's website. They actually have a very exhaustive list of where every Boren Scholar since like the inception of this fellowship, where they have worked. And so if you have questions about that or what would qualify, go in and look on their website and find that office, that opportunity that best aligns with what you're interested in. So the Boren Scholarship, one of the most fantastic ways to study a foreign language and hopefully study it without having to pay anything out of pocket, but especially if you're looking for that career in government and foreign affairs, you do have that non-competitive status when you're applying for jobs after your Boren experience, which essentially means if you're going up for a position and it's between you and another candidate, all things being equal, you are a Boren Scholar and they are not, the job will go to you. So definitely something to consider. Now we're going to move away from some of the purely language focused fellowships and look more on the fellowships that focus on international affairs, public policy, and other fields. The Wrangle program is one that's going to come back again later because they have the Wrangle Graduate Fellowship for you to earn a master's degree. But they also have this Wrangle Summer Enrichment Program, which is for any undergraduate. I think, maybe a sophomore would be the ideal candidate for this, but it is still relevant for juniors as well. Now this is, it doesn't have the allure of like, oh, you get to go and travel abroad and you have this year-long experience, blah, 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 blah. The Wrangle Summer Enrichment Program, in my opinion, is much more pragmatic, but still really informative. And it helps get your foot in the door, not just at Howard University where it's hosted, but in DC, which for obvious reasons, many students interested in these fields would like to be for either graduate school or maybe for their long-term career. And so it's the connections that you can build through this program that are most valuable for many of the students that apply. As you can see, during the program, you're going to be visiting USAID, the Pentagon, Department of State, Congress, like you're going to be visiting all, and they have a much longer list on the website that you can peruse to be able to engage with professionals in that area or in those areas. But in addition to that, you're going to be taking these two courses, History of U.S. Foreign Relations and Political Economy. So yes, it's full funding to take classes over the summer, but again, the value is being in DC and being able to engage with these departments and professionals in this area. And so in a slightly similar vein, but maybe with a little bit more I actually don't even want to say that. I was going to say long-term value. I do think there's a lot of long-term value to the Wrangle Summer Enrichment Program, especially if you might be considering a Wrangle Fellowship down the line. But PPIA, which stands for Public Policy and International Affairs, is the Junior Summer Institute, is another summer program. Their prerogative is they really want to increase diversity within the field of international affairs and public policy. And so, they look for students of color, students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, student veterans. They want to diversify this field. And so this is something that you can apply to following your third year. And the partner institutions, as you can see, Carnegie Mellon, Princeton, UC Berkeley, University of Michigan, these are all like fantastically prestigious universities. And so again, it's I'm taking summer classes, but maybe I'm engaging at a university where I might see myself after graduate school. And I actually, I can pull it up later, but there is this graduate school consortium, and I believe it's over 50 or over 60 universities that are a part of that consortium. And what that means is if I'm selected for PPIA and I perform well in my classes over the summer, I graduate from the program, then if I'm applying to graduate school at any of the schools in this consortium, what that means is automatically my application fees are waived. And the minimum that I would receive if I ultimately choose to go to graduate school there is a $5,000 one-time scholarship that they would give you. Now that is the absolute minimum, and the vast majority of the universities in that consortium offer anywhere from that minimum, but most likely greater. But it can be up to a full 100% tuition waiver if you attend that university as a PPIA fellow. And so that's something to, as you're maybe if you're considering graduate school and as you're going through these lists of universities and reaching out to advisors or maybe faculty at that institution, institution, if there's a graduate school that's going to, fully fund you to attend there, I think that's definitely something that you could look into or should consider. But PPIA also really sells itself on its alumni network. They have over 4,000 students that have participated in this program, many of which are now firmly entrenched in their careers. And so PPIA is about building those long-lasting connections, making it easier for you to not just access graduate school, but after that master's degree or after maybe that PhD, helping you transition into your career. And so again, it's very similar to the Wrangell Summer Enrichment Program. PPIA is really invested in making graduate school more accessible and investing in your long-term career. Now, why perhaps many of you attended this presentation is the Pickering or the Wrangell or the what is on the subsequent side, the Payne Fellowship, all will fund a 2-year full-time domestic master's degree in international affairs or any related discipline. And so, obviously that's a fantastic package. I believe it's up to about $42,000 that you would receive. And the way I think that's broken down is about 24,000 of that goes to books, tuition, and fees, and then 18,000 would go towards your personal expenses like housing and stuff like that. Now, the nice thing about these scholarships is they're extremely accessible in the sense that if you can apply to a Wrangell, you can quite literally apply to a Pickering and Payne, and that is because the application, the essays are identical. And so that doesn't mean write an application. There is some nuance that you need to consider here. But the application is very approachable. And so what you're going to be asked to do is and this is one of the major challenges of this application, is you have a 600-word essay, personal statement that needs to explore both who you are and your interest in your field and in foreign affairs. 600 words goes by extremely quickly, obviously. So you need to be very intentional with the narrative that you're crafting and the goals that you share. Now, in addition to that, you do have a 400-word essay that is your statement of need. And so kind of this similar theme to a lot of the fellowships that we've been talking about. These fellowships want to be accessible for students who come from high financial needs backgrounds. And so they want you to be able to explore that, to talk about your situation and why you need this funding, why it's so crucial for you to be a part of this program. And in addition to the scholarship funding, and the funding for, living expenses, they also provide funding for 2 summer internships. I believe it's up to $10,000 to cover your flight and travel, because for any of these, for Pickering, Wrangell, and I'll talk about Payne in a minute, after your second year, at the conclusion of your graduate degree, you have a international internship. So between your first and second year, you pursue a domestic internship, and then after your second year, that will be an international placement at a U.S. embassy or consulate if you're with Pickering or Wrangell, or with Payne, which I can just I'm talking about it so much I can just jump ahead. It will be with a USAID mission. And so Payne is like I said, it's exactly the same as the other 2 fellowships in terms of the application process. They just have a specific connection to USAID and international development. So if that is the route that you're wanting to go into, then absolutely consider Payne. If it's not, then maybe you can just keep your focus on Wrangell and Pickering. And so to briefly touch on a little bit more on those internships. So if you're applying for the Wrangell scholarship, and I want to make sure that I get this correct, so I wrote it down just to make sure, your summer internship is going to be working on issues impacting foreign affairs and foreign relations, but you'll be working with the U.S. Congress. Whereas if you're working with Pickering, your summer internship is going to be with the U.S. Department of State. So similar experiences in some ways, but if dependent on the career trajectory that you're wanting to head in, maybe this could be one of those pairs that you split, because there have been instances where students have been offered both fellowships. You can only select one, and so maybe depending on what internship you would prefer, that could be one of those pairs that you split. But otherwise, this is one that is coming up rather soon. And so Wrangle being due coincidentally on my birthday, so it would definitely be a great birthday gift if you submitted an application, at least for me. And so we do have 2 full months to work on this fellowship, but this is one if you are a senior or if you are an alumni. That you would want to get started on relatively soon. Something else that I will point out, because I would absolutely encourage any college senior to go ahead and apply for this fellowship if it aligns with the goals that you have. But something to consider is, Pickering and Wrangle and Payne are funding a 2-year graduate degree program. It also comes with, if you complete this program, a 5-year commitment of working with the federal government. And so for most people applying, obviously that is exactly the career trajectory that they want. So that is like it's a moot point. I'd be happy to do that. But I say this because at least our recent track record of recipients for these fellowships tend to be students who have a little bit of separation from their undergraduate experience. That is not to say they would not select you as a senior if you have the resume to support the goals that you want to pursue in this field. But the reason why we've had maybe success with those students that have a couple of years of separation is because those students were pursuing other fellowships or international experiences. They were pursuing work in their field. And so they're able to really showcase in their application, hey, look at me, I don't just have a relevant degree to work in this field, I've been doing work in the field, I've been educating myself, I've been learning a foreign language, I've been doing X, Y, and Z, whatever that looks like. And they're able to really show that they have that commitment to not just finish the graduate degree, but to finish that 5-year commitment. Because what Pickering, Wrangle, and Payne do not want to do is, award this to a student, a qualified candidate who ultimately realizes this isn't what they want to do, maybe at the completion of that program, because then unfortunately, if they don't complete that 5-year commitment, they're on the hook to repay what Pickering and Wrangle and Payne offered them. And so again, I know I'm being long-winded, but what you really want to be able to showcase in your application is that I have commitment to this work. And you can show that through how you've performed in your classes, maybe research that you've done, international experiences that you've had, or like I said, language study. And so we want to make sure that we're fleshing all of that out in your resume, in your application, in your recommendation letters, which I should touch on. All of these require 2 letters of recommendation. One of those does need to come from a faculty member, probably at your home institution, and then the other can come from a community leader. I know that's pretty broad terms, it's going to look different for everyone, but that's something that we need to talk about when you're considering those 2 recommenders. And then finally, there we go. Why you should be reaching out to myself, to Bonnie, to Dr. Filer, our director, maybe even Keith McCall up in the Office of Graduate Fellowships and Awards, is because we are very familiar with this fellowship, with many other fellowships, and we have an idea for what these review committees are looking for, and so we want to sit down with you, talk about your goals, talk about your values, talk about the career that you see for yourself, and how can we best flesh that out in 600 words, 800 words for boring, 200 words for CLS. And so, this style of writing for fellowships, it's not purely academic, it's not purely creative, it's somewhere in the middle. And we want to make sure that you're representing yourself on paper as well as you will represent yourself in person through an interview, maybe through being a recipient through this program. And so we'll work with you. We'll set out a timeline of like how best to work on this application over the coming months. But then we're also really invested in, for all of our students that are applying to and pursuing fellowships, that we rarely want you to put, if ever, all of your eggs into one basket. And so especially for like my 4th year students, my seniors that are working on applications for Randall and Pickering, maybe applying to a Fulbright fellowship, which we didn't talk too much here, but again, reach out to us. That's another one we can delve into. These applications are usually due within the first month or two of your senior year. And obviously your senior year doesn't end with these applications. So I'm always talking to my students about, in addition to the fellowships, and maybe there are other fellowships that you'd be interested in the late fall and early spring. I'm confident there could be, but then the conversation immediately shifts to, okay, are you considering graduate school applications in December, January, February? Have you thought about applying to a couple internships or post-bac opportunities or, anything else? Just so what I ideally see for my seniors is that during spring of their senior year is they have options. Maybe they have a fellowship offer, maybe they have an offer for graduate school, maybe they have a job offer. And at that point, which maybe your values and your priorities have shifted from like summer before your senior year to spring of your senior year. But the point is you can choose the best opportunity for you at that time. And so our office really wants to connect you to these other opportunities as best we can and help you find what's best for you. But that, I believe, is really my presentation. So again, my name is Jesse. That's my contact information, Bonnie's and Dr. Filer. Or if you just want to send an email to our general account, that can just be, hey, this is me, this is my availability. We will get back to you and schedule an appointment in the coming weeks. But I'm happy to answer any questions if you would like to type them into the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending. It's a pleasure speaking to you for goodness, probably the past like 30 minutes. I don't know. I tend to ramble and lose track of time, 33 minutes. But please let us know if you have any questions and we'll definitely get back to you soon if you reach out to us this week. Thank you so much. In the chat, any questions? Thank you, Ella.
I'm gonna head out, Jesse.
Cool. Thanks,
Thank
Bonnie.
you. Yep.
Okay, Sophia, are we able to reach out to ONF members to help with application process? Yes. We would very much love for you to reach out. It's never, I would say it's never too early to contact us and set up a meeting. For some students of mine right now, the opportunities they're interested in really aren't due anytime soon, but there are still productive things we can do during that time. Depending on what you're applying to, yes, we can definitely set up a plan for what you need to do and by when. And the one thing I would recommend right now is to start thinking about who your recommenders might be and who you might reach out to. So yes, we would be happy to work with you. Please feel free to reach out to us, send us your availability, and we'll get back to you soon. Of course, thank you so much for attending.